Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, this stock sell-off is intensifying around the world this morning. In Japan, the Topix sank 6.1%. That completed a two-day drop of 9.2%, the biggest rout over 2 days since Japan's tsunami back in 2011. U.S. futures, as you mentioned, are sliding once again after yesterday's Wall Street sell-off, following data that showed weekly unemployment claims hit a near one-year high, while manufacturing shrank. Cam Harvey, professor at Duke Business School, thinks the Fed is behind the ball again.
The Fed is very late again. So they were late to raise interest rates when they were kind of brushing off the inflation surge, and they're late to reduce the rates. And the cost could be very substantial.
Duke business professor Cam Harvey thinks one of those costs could be a hard landing. Meanwhile, a rally in treasuries is now into its seventh straight day. Again, checking the 10-year, it's up 6/32 now. The yield 3.95%. The 2-year is at 4.14%.
Well, Nathan, all of this makes this morning's jobs report a crucial data point for investors. The forecast is for a gain of 175,000 non-farm jobs in July. We get a preview from Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
The forecast is for a slight cooling in the labor market during July, but the risk for Wall Street and the Fed is a more dramatic drop in hiring and/or a large rise in unemployment. Jobs data from ADP, ISM, and initial jobless claims have come in weaker than expected in the past few weeks. At their meeting Wednesday, Fed officials acknowledged a payrolls-led economic slowdown is now as much of a risk as higher inflation. A bad news report today could raise questions about their decision to hold rates steady this week. Investors have already priced in rate cuts at the next 4 Fed meetings. Michael McKee, Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks, Mike. Adding to pressure to stocks as well, some disappointing high-tech earnings led by Intel. Those shares are plunging nearly 22%. The chipmaker forecast revenue for the third quarter below estimates and is suspending its dividends starting in the fourth quarter. James Kakmak is a technology analyst at Clockwise Capital.
They have to right the ship somehow because the growth is just anemic. And one way to do that is to find a way to grow again, or you can fix things on the expense side. And it looks like they're giving up on the former and going toward the latter.
Now, to that point, Clockwise Capital, James Kakmak notes Intel plans to slash 15,000 jobs.
Well, Nathan, shares of Amazon are down more than 8% after years of cutting costs. Investors are concerned the company is returning to a boom in spending. In an earnings call, Amazon's CEO Andy Jassy warned profits will have to take a back seat so the company can invest in artificial intelligence.
We remain very bullish on the medium to long-term impact of AI in every business we know and can imagine. The progress may not be one straight line for companies. Generative AI especially is quite iterative, and companies have to build muscle around the best way to solve actual customer problems.
Amazon CEO Andy Jassy projected operating income for the current quarter will be $11.5 billion to $15 billion. Analysts on average were looking for $15.7 billion.
Well, meantime, Karen, Apple is bucking the sell-off trend somewhat this morning. The shares are down, but only by 0.2%. Apple's predicting its new artificial intelligence features will spur iPhone upgrades in coming months and will help the company reemerge from a sales slowdown that hit its business in China especially hard. Mark Gurman covers Apple for Bloomberg News.
Apple Intelligence is really the big upgrade on the iPhone that they're trying to sell this year. They talked about AI so much on this call. I haven't heard them talk about AI so much since their developers conference in June or maybe ever.
Bloomberg technology reporter Mark Gurman says Apple projects total sales in the September quarter will grow at about 5%. Wall Street projected a 4% clip.
Well, Nathan, we'll have more on the market sell-off and tech earnings in a few minutes, but now President Biden is celebrating a major win in global diplomacy. The president was at Joint Base Andrews outside Washington last night as Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, former Marine Paul Whelan, and journalist Alsu Kurmasheva came home. The three Americans are part of the largest prisoner swap with Russia since the Cold War, and President Biden said it couldn't have gone done without support from U.S. allies.
I meant what I said. Alliances make a difference. We stepped up. They took a chance for us. It mattered a lot.
President Biden was joined on the tarmac by Vice President and new presumptive Democratic nominee Kamala Harris.
I'm very thankful for our president and what he has done over his entire career, but in particular as it relates to these families and these individuals.
Vice President Harris says the exchange did not come easily. In return for the Americans and other prisoners, Russia won the release of Vadim Krazakov, who had been serving life in Germany for killing a Chechen separatist. Germany had long resisted Krasakov's release.
Well, now, Karen, President Biden faces a diplomatic challenge in the Middle East. The president told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire with Hamas. The two leaders spoke yesterday. Biden did pledge to support Israel against renewed threats from Iran and allied militias like Hezbollah.
Nathan, the U.S. has recognized Venezuelan opposition presidential candidate Edmundo Gonzalez in the disputed election. And Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has that story.
The statement from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says it is clear to the United States, and most importantly to the Venezuelan people, that Gonzalez has won the most votes in the July 28th election. Blinken goes on to say that the United States congratulates Gonzalez on his successful campaign and hopes that discussions on a respectful, peaceful transition will occur. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, meanwhile, says she is in hiding, fearing for her life. Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
Okay, Ed, thank you. As for U.S. politics, we have a winner in a primary race from more than a month ago. A Trump-backed candidate has defeated the chairman of the conservative House Freedom Caucus in Virginia's 5th Congressional District. State Senator and former Navy SEAL John McGuire has been declared the winner over Congressman Bob Good by just 370 votes out of nearly 63,000 cast. Before the recount, McGuire's lead was 374 votes.
Nathan, and Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign says she's raised a record $310 million in July. Harris's haul more than doubles the nearly $139 million Trump raised last month. Harris's campaign says grassroots donors giving less than $200 accounted for 94% of the 4.2 million donations that were received. Time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's John Tucker. John, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. 2 NYPD officers are recovering after they were shot while responding to a robbery on Manhattan's Lower East Side. Police say a suspect armed with a gun began robbing women and snatching their purses in a mahjong parlor at 91 Canal Street yesterday afternoon. Nearby officers heard the screams and responded as the suspect fled. Police identified him as 22-year-old Joshua Dorsett. When the officers caught the suspect, the NYPD says he fired one shot that struck both sergeants. New York Mayor Eric Adams.
The suspect, who actually visited his probation officer this morning, is in custody at this time. And I want to be clear, our NYPD officers did not fire on the suspect.
One sergeant was hit in the upper thigh. The other was grazed on his leg. A sheriff is answering more questions after a deputy shot and killed a woman in her home last month. Sonia Massey called 911 about a possible intruder before the deputies arrived. In Springfield, Illinois, Sheriff Jack Campbell was asked about now ex-deputy Sean Grayson, having worked for several police agencies in a short time.
There was nothing in his background that would disqualify him from being a police officer in Illinois. In fact, he'd been hired by 5 other agencies, and he'd been certified by the state of Illinois 6 different times to be a police officer here. So there was nothing in his background that would prevent him from being a police officer.
Sheriff Campbell says when the department failed Massey, he won't resign. Dozens of homes have been destroyed by a wildfire in Larimer County, Colorado. This woman lives in the town of Drake and says she's gotten confirmation her home burned to the ground.
So I've lost what is the best community in this whole entire world. And I'm very sad about that. That's very sad to me that we can no longer call that home.
Well, she says she evacuated Monday while her husband had already left town for work. The blaze, one of almost 100 large fires ranging across the West. And more than 100 video game performers picketed in front of the Warner Brothers studios in Los Angeles to protest against what they call an unwillingness from top gaming companies to protect actors against the unregulated use of artificial intelligence. Global news 24 hours a day, whenever you want it, with Bloomberg News Now. I'm John Tucker. And this is Bloomberg. Nathan and Karen.
John, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. Katie Ledecky and Simone Biles, Olympic GOATs. They've got the hardware to prove it. Ledecky, part of the 800 freestyle relay team that won the silver medal, giving her 13 career medals, most of any American female athlete. Biles, in competition that was closer than expected, still won the gold in the gymnastics all-around, her 7th career medal, 4th gold. She also won 6 world championships. Suni Lee, who won the gold 3 years ago, this time took the bronze. But the Olympics, so often about unknown athletes, like the 4 rowers that won the first U.S. gold medal in that event since 1960, and the women's fencing team winning a first-ever gold for the U.S. It's the 3rd career gold for Lee Kiefer. Yankees tonight start a 9-game homestand against the Blue Jays. Yankees actually been better on the road, just had a 5-1 road trip. Tonight is Jazz Chisholm's first game of the Pinstripes. He just had a pair of 2 home run games. He's also been playing a surprisingly solid third base. Here's Aaron Judge on his new teammate.
Yes, a guy to play a new position for the first time in his career, and some big games for us, and it looks like he's been playing there his whole life. So he brings a great energy. He runs the bases well. And we kind of like having him right in the middle of the lineup, man. It's doing some damage, getting on base. It's been a big part.
Marcus Stroman on the mound tonight. He has struggled lately. The Mets visit the Angels, who just got word that their so often injured star Mike Trout will miss the rest of the season with a knee injury. White Sox tonight bring their 17-game losing streak to Minnesota. They haven't won since July 10th. They earlier this season lost 13 in a row. First NFL preseason game in Canton, Ohio. The Bears beat the Texans 21-17. The Hall of Fame game was stopped in the third quarter due to severe weather. First look at the NFL's new rule on kickoffs. 7 all-time greats will be inducted into the Hall tomorrow. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen and Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. We are watching a global stock sell-off this morning led by big tech in this country after earnings disappointment from 3 tech giants. Joining us for some analysis is Matthew Bloxham, technology analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Matt, good morning. Let's start with Intel. It is among the biggest laggards on the stock exchange this morning. Is Intel on the outside looking in when it comes to the AI race?
Yeah, I think it very much is. Or, perhaps another way, it's definitely on the wrong side of the AI opportunity right now. Kind of quite a bleak update they gave yesterday. Kind of weak margins in the quarter and a very muted outlook for revenue growth next quarter. Probably $12.5 to $13.5 billion versus the market expectation of 14. But I think it goes beyond, just the next quarter. What they're doing on downsizing the business, taking out more than 15% of heads and cutting their gross capex by something like 20% or more, is a really clear signal that the forward market opportunity for them is substantially smaller than they had been expecting, and that's a reflection of I guess kind of getting a little bit caught out by maybe the pace at which the generative AI opportunity has taken off, and obviously all of that opportunity occurring primarily to NVIDIA. Intel used to be kind of really strong in the server market, and all of those server investments, or most of them now, are really going towards AI powered technology, which is not a market that they're kind of really strong in.
Let's turn to Amazon, where they've been focused on cost cuts for quite a few months now. Andy Jassy, the CEO, saying that he's going to put profits on the back burner to really ramp up AI spending. How much catch-up does Amazon have to play with some of the other players in the AI space?
Yeah, I don't think they're playing catch up. They're just kind of matching all of the other big heavyweights. Dollar for dollar. The market leader in cloud services, been investing for some time in AI, and we've heard a very familiar story from all of the big tech rivals. So think Microsoft, think Meta, think Alphabet, Google. They're all investing huge billions of dollars to build their AI technology platforms for the mid to long term. The revenue is coming through, but it's not coming through that quickly. But they all know that if they don't develop their technology platforms today, they'll miss out on a big share of the market in the midterm. And that's essentially what they're doing.
I mean, while Apple is kind of bucking the overall sell-off trend, trading little changed right now, they've delayed the rollout of their AI features. But is that going to be enough to spur this upgrade cycle that so many have been talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, the AI features, Apple Intelligence, will start to come through in iPhone 16, and so I think that is really the next big focus for investors with Apple. If we looked at the quarter they just reported, iPhone sales were still down slightly, about 1%, but that's a big improvement on the previous quarter. And obviously, what they need to do, given that's give or take 50% of the revenues, is get iPhone sales growing again, and the products refresh cycle and I guess a smartphone upgrade super cycle is what they need. And the big hope is that intelligence or artificial intelligence features on the device and their slightly differentiated, unique way of offering AI is going to be enough to kind of get more customers to upgrade.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.